From a goat with 8 legs to a mysterious Russian alien, these are the craziest mutant animals in history. If I were to ask you how many legs a goat has, how many would you say? I mean, the answer's pretty easy, 4. Well, imagine Croatian farmer Zoran Poparich's surprise when he looked down at one of his new kids to find that it had 8 whole legs. So how on earth did this mutation happen? Well, it's believed that Octogoat was not alone in the womb and may have actually absorbed his twin before being born, hence the extra legs. Now, you might think that 8 legs would translate into this goat being a bit of a superhero. However, it actually turned out that the extra legs were far from beneficial, and poor old Octogoat could barely even muster the strength to walk. His status after a couple of weeks of birth was never revealed by Poparich, but there's a good chance that, unfortunately, Octogoat didn't make it past his first year. What's even more interesting is that the mother of Octogoat gave birth to many kids after Octogoat was born, and they were all happy and healthy as normal. So this 8-legged mutant was literally a 1 in a billion occurrence, and it's unlikely that we'll ever see something like it again. The next mutant on our list is genuinely the stuff of nightmares. In 2017, a group walking along a beach in Indonesia were greeted with a huge 50-foot-long monster that had washed up from the depths of the ocean. It was dubbed the Serum Island Kraken, and while it didn't exactly look like the ship-crushing behemoth from Pirates of the Caribbean, its ventral grooves, 2 racks of baleen plates, and huge upper jaw were a very scary sight. To this day, scientists are divided as to what this Kraken actually was exactly. It's accepted that it was a baleen whale of some kind, but other than this, the identification of the Serum Island Kraken remains a mystery. But here's the scariest thing. Something was able to kill the Kraken, which means that somewhere out there's an even bigger threat in the ocean. The next mutant on the list was also found washed up on a beach, this time in Russia on the river Kavashi. When it was found, it looked like some kind of alien with a weirdly shaped head and a tiny body. Initial identification suggested that this creature was a mutated chicken embryo, which would explain the odd face shape. However, the embryo had no wings or a neck, which brought serious questions to this assessment. Other scientists suggested the creature was some kind of frog. So what caused this crazy mutation? Well, the researchers at the Institute of Biophysics who handled the creature have yet to shed any light on their findings. However, one thing that cannot be forgotten about is the fact that this thing was found washed up on the shores of the Kavashi River, which is right where the Leningrad nuclear power plant was situated. Maybe, just maybe, this creature was a result of nuclear mutation, and maybe Russian authorities didn't want anyone finding out about it. Or perhaps it was just a mutated frog. We will truly never know. Let's stay in Russia for a moment and look at something even more suspicious. One day, back in the 90s, an old woman was taking a very ordinary walk through the woods, but during her walk, she came across something completely unordinary. A human-like corpse. Standing just 9.8 inches tall and nicknamed Alisoshenka, this corpse looked half human, half alien. Aside from being extremely small, Alisoshenka had a number of features that caused many to think she wasn't in fact human. Her skull, for instance, was extremely pointy, and her eyes were out of proportion and covered in dark spots. The DNA of Alisoshenka has since been revealed, allegedly proving her to be a human. However, many aren't convinced, thinking it could be a sign of a crazy mutant animal, or perhaps even extraterrestrial life. Another mutant animal shrouded in controversy was discovered in the United States in 2012. Passerbys were shocked to find a giant dead body washed up on the shore underneath the Brooklyn Bridge. At first glance, this body looked a bit like a dog or a rat. However, upon closer examination, it's clear that it was neither. In fact, it was nothing like any animal anyone had ever seen before. Very quickly, ideas started to circulate that this Brooklyn Bridge monster was evidence of a research lab experiment gone wrong. Authorities responded to these allegations by saying that the animal was actually a dog whose body composition had changed as a result of being in the water for so long. However, for many, this didn't explain the mystery, and there's a good chance that this monster was a mutant resulting from a failed lab experiment and was never meant to be discovered by the public. Being two-faced generally isn't a great personality trait, right? Well, imagine being literally two-faced. That's right, the next animal on our list is none other than Frank and Louie, a two-faced cat. This mutation occurred as a result of something called craniofacial duplication. Essentially, this is a variant of conjoined twinning and causes an animal to grow two heads on one body. It's a condition that affects humans and animals, but generally affected animals don't live for more than a few days or weeks. But Frank and Louie became an exception to the exception, surviving over 12 years with two heads and breaking a world record in the process. The cat unfortunately did die in 2014. Interestingly, when cats are born with this condition, only one face tends to work as normal. For example, Louie's face was not connected to the throat, so couldn't digest food. The third shared eye in between the faces was also completely blind. Kenny the tiger became famous in the early 2000s by being one of the world's only fully grown white tigers. Kenny was the epitome of genetic mutation, but his story is actually pretty sad. As you might expect, you won't find a white tiger roaming around in the wild. In fact, they can only be born through highly selective breeding. To breed a white tiger, you have to breed blood-related tigers together in the hope of triggering the right mutation. However, by breeding relatives, the chances of triggering other deformities increase drastically, and in most cases, white tigers will be stillborn or die within a few weeks due to illness. Kenny was one of the lucky mutants in a sense, as he was able to make it into adulthood. However, he suffered a number of health problems as a result of inbreeding, such as a deformed face, cross-eyedness, cleft palates, and a spine deformity. Sadly, he passed away from cancer at the age of 8. He was a clear example of the dark side of selective breeding and genetic mutation. April 1996 saw one of the worst man-made disasters ever unfold as the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Ukraine exploded, releasing unprecedented levels of radiation into the environment. Fast forward to today, and Chernobyl and the surrounding areas are completely deserted and likely will be for decades to come. However, it's not completely barren, as people had to abandon their homes so quickly, many had to leave their dogs behind, which has left a population of dogs completely exposed to high levels of radiation for years. And the effect of this radiation has caused some pretty interesting mutations. You might expect me to come out and say that these dogs have ears growing out of their backs and glow-in-the-dark fangs. However, that's not quite how radioactive mutation works. The changes actually occur on a cellular level, and researchers have said they'll be able to tell if a dog has lived near Chernobyl just by doing some blood work. Dogs exposed to this radiation also have increased rates of cataracts, and certain dogs have displayed other mutations like an increased likelihood of developing tumors. So yeah, it's not like anything from the movies. However, in generations to come, we could see some crazier mutations develop in these radioactive puppies. If you thought that Frank and Louie was crazy, then Froggy is literally going to blow your mind. Why? Well, this one frog had not one, not two, but 3 heads. When you first take a look at this thing, it kind of looks like 3 frogs engaging in a rugby scrum. However, when you look a little bit more closely, you'll notice that all 3 heads are actually connected, making for one giant 6-eyed, 6-legged amalgamation. And unlike Frank and Louie, all 6 eyes and legs of Froggy retain their full function. Whether the different mouths functioned is a different story, and one that the team of scientists in the UK were unable to answer because they managed to lose the specimen just a couple of days after capturing it. By now you're probably thinking, what would cause an innocent frog to grow 2 extra heads? Well, the cause is disputed. Some people think that it's just a freak genetic mutation. However, others believe that this so-called genetic anomaly occurred as a result of the emitted radiation from the Hinkley nuclear power station, which is located just 19 kilometers from where Froggy was first found. Again, the evidence of whether the radiation had any kind of effect is hazy at best, but if it's true, well, it means we could be seeing 3-headed Chernobyl dogs sooner than you think. And the last animal on our list is actually a mix of not one, but 2 animals, a monkey and a pig. The crazy mutation came to life in China in 2016 when a pig gave birth to a piglet that had a face that exactly resembled a monkey. Seriously, this piglet was chimp up front and trotters out back. This poor guy wasn't exactly graced with the world's best looking genetics, and unfortunately, he didn't have the longest life either. Because of its face shape, the pig couldn't receive milk from its mother, and the owner had to bottle feed it. However, reports suggested that the poor creature barely made it past 4 days before passing. The monkey pig has since riled up controversy about genetically modified food, which many are suggesting was the cause for such a mutation. Other people have argued that this was a pure genetic roll of the dice. The arguments for both sides are pretty interesting, but the one thing we do know is that poor old monkey pig definitely deserves a mention as one of the craziest mutant animals in history.